Okay, we are live.
Thank you.
Shalini, can you make it full screen? If possible, I still see the thumbnails on the side.
Let me see what I can do.
Presentation mode, maybe.
I think, Shalini, you are using your phone, I guess, right?
No, I'm using my iPad, but I think now it should be full screen, right?
Yeah, it is.
Hi, everyone. We will begin our session in next 1 minute. Hi, everyone. A very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Ankita from NASSCOM, back with the fourth episode of our newly launched PM 101 series. These are a set of finely curated sessions for the beginners aspiring to get into product management. I have with me Shalini Sankarshana, co-lead NASSCOM Product Skill Dev and Head International and Asset Management Broadridge. She will share her knowledge and moreover days as a PM. You can ask questions anytime during the webinar as it will be an interactive session. And also, please leave your valuable feedback to help us improve our future episodes. Welcome, Shalini, and over to you.
Thank you, Ankita. Again, thanks to NASSCOM for this opportunity. So let's quickly begin. This is Shalini Sankarshana. I think today's session is the first 90 days as a product manager. We've had three episodes already where it discussed, I think Malti discussed about what is product management and what are the avenues to get into it. And we had Suman and who discussed about what are the various career options within product management. And we had a latest session day before on how do you use data to do product management better. And today what we want to look at is how do you conduct yourself as you enter a new organization or a new team as a product manager. So I will focus on the why and the concepts and the hows and the techniques. I will allude to them. Post this, we will have more detailed sessions coming up on specific topics. Plus, I'm available on my social media as well as through NASSCOM to address any questions you may have. So keep a watch on this whole series on NASSCOM Skill Dev. You will see a lot more formats of us interacting with you on the same topic coming up. So moving on, that's me. I think beyond the professional introduction, which I'm sure is available on my LinkedIn profile, I just wanted to share a couple of things about myself. For the last 2+ decades that I have been, like my career has been spanning, the entire career has been around products. That's why I kind of talk about living and breathing products. While financial services has been the focus for me, products has been the constant. I've worked across multiple geographies, multiple functions across the product life cycle, and can empathize and understand multiple sides of the conversation. So I will try to share some of those learnings with you. And the third point, as a personality, my mindset is about flow and unfolding. This is something which my mentor has been helping me understand. What it means is, and I think the reason it's important why I put it out there is, as a product manager, we are exposed to multiple universes, and comfortable with a lot of unstructured environment, lot of chaos, and continue to build certainty, continue to get insights. I think that's probably the biggest part of the job. So I guess at heart, I've been a product manager. So today I lead multiple product teams. I've built product management practice across the multiple business lines, and would be happy to share what I think could be the crucial moments and crucial learnings in the first 90 days of a product manager. So I've shared my social media coordinates. I'm happy to connect with you. So moving on, before we begin the topic, I want to spend a couple of minutes just to educate all of you on the reason behind this whole PM 101 series that we are launching. As part of NASSCOM and NASSCOM Product Connect, we believe product management and building products is going to be the future for the entire software ecosystem and technology ecosystem for India. And we believe for this, we need to understand, we need to develop product thinking, product culture as a way of life. And it's like a muscle. I keep talking about this. Now, product thinking is a muscle. It's not just about the role you have, but it's about how you think and how you behave, how you operate in any circumstance. And it is different from a standard thinking in other paradigms. And coming back, the vision for the skill dev pillar, which is one of the pillars in NASSCOM, is to create 50,000 product managers in India by 2023. A fairly lofty vision and a grand goal, but we are truly looking forward to you and many, many, many more of you to be part of this journey and this movement. We're really looking to push this across as a movement across the country and the globe. The mission is to build a national skilling community movement for the Indian software product ecosystem. While we originate this in India, it's available for the globe, and we want to welcome and embrace everybody who wants to be part of this journey into this movement. So key objectives being that we want to build capability around product management, product mindset, build industry and academia relationships, which includes a lot of you in the audience, and accelerate growth of software products in India. And the reason we are doing this is we believe this is the next wave in the software ecosystem for us, and a huge, huge, huge opportunity for us as India, as a nation, to build products. There's a whole element of SaaS to it, where we not only just build products but provide us services, and we really build local and go global. And this has been some of the journey of this pillar. The reason I put this up is for all of you in the audience and people who are looking at it offline post the session. This session is available in a recorded mode. You can see that there is a host of very valuable content that's available, and this is available for everyone, and would really welcome all of you to look at this and leverage this. So let's begin our journey. I wanted to take the quote by Michael Watkins. He's the author of the book, The First 90 Days. The First 90 Days is a paradigm that he introduced back more than a decade ago. And which is where this was not just about product management, it's about any career change, taking on a new role. What would we do in the first 90 days? And the reason he chose the horizon was 90 days is where it's typically, from a business standpoint, it relates to a quarter. From a relatability and cognitive standpoint, 90 days is a horizon where people expect us, any individual, to make an impact. So now let's look at this quote, and I think this is very important. The quote says, joining a new company or a new team. A new team is something which I added while he was referring to a new company itself, is akin to an organ transplant, and you are the new organ. If you are not thoughtful in adapting to the new situation, you would end up being attacked by the organizational immune system and rejected. What it really talking about is adapting really happens in the first few days, but we can continue to adapt after that. But the first 90 days is where you probably make the first impression across multiple stakeholders, and an incorrect step or a misstep, or a misrepresentation of our positioning can really end up being having a fairly serious impact. So let's look at what it means. Let's unpack the statement a bit more. I think that's what I want to try to do. So focus of the first 90 days, and this is based on truly my experiences, and I've been collecting inputs from my community, and I've also asked some of these questions out in the public network. So these are summary of those learnings. So focus of the first 90 days, in my personal experience and belief, has been that number one focus is to really learn, learn, and learn. Any of us who are getting into that role, we would never get that kind of a honeymoon period ever again, to just sit back and listen, observe, and understand. And when I say no, I put up these four dimensions of KYC, KYB, KYP, and KYT. And there are more, but these are probably some of the most impactful dimensions. Know your customer. We will talk about what multiple ways that you would need to know your customer, but truly, customer is what is going to drive the entire product management journey. So knowing your customer and knowing in a way with almost unbiased eyes, because you're entering into the role for the first time, is probably a blessing, and is also a period where we will have to be very, very open to hearing what the customer feedback is. We should continue to be open-mindedness when it comes to customer, but this is a period where we are truly listening to what the customer and the user's needs are, and it's understandable that this is the period where we have to assimilate those learnings. So KYC, which is know your customer, number one. Number two, know your business. Know your business talks of two things. One is, what is the business we are into, to which this product is really aligned to as a portfolio, and what is the organization all about in a general business sense, and how is the product goal connected to the business goal. Very important to understand this. Some of it may not be laid out very clearly, and depending upon the organizations we enter, the amount of information in a structured way that comes to us might be difficult. But this should be a very, very key objective, to understand the alignment and understanding of the overall business model. Know your product. Absolutely, at the heart of it all is our product, and that the multiple dimensions of the product, which we will discuss in a few minutes. And know your team. And team here refers to everybody. Team here refers to stakeholders. I chose not to use the term stakeholders because stakeholders give you an impression of only folks who influence a certain decision. But for me, stakeholders are also a very, very key part of the entire product team. So here, team would mean your product engineering, your own product management team, your product assurance teams, your entire software development team, your product implementations teams, your management team, your account management team, your sales, your marketing, your documentation teams, your release teams, and when you get out of the organization, your customers and your implementers, your integrators, your third-party ecosystem. So the whole team, understanding of the team, is a continuous process. Very important to build the foundation and the relationship during the first 90 days, which has a nice segue into next point. Second point is all about building relationships. And in a way, product management is a function where it is so much of building relationships, internally and externally, and very healthy and positive relationships. And this is probably the bedrock of many things going forward. And third is communicate, communicate, communicate. I think 90% of our job is communicate. Not only in the first 90 days, every single day as a product manager. And communication can be in multiple forms: verbal, written. Written is an extremely critical. And to your teams, continue to reiterate the vision, to your customers, to the market, to your stakeholders, to your business. So communication is where the entire key is going to be. So this, I believe, should be the focus of the first 90 days. Absolutely. And even throughout your product journey. So I will take a pause here to see if we have any questions. So let me see on the chat window. Okay, so far no questions. Do we have any questions from the participants now? Do we want to hear any? Okay, please continue to write to me on chat so that I will take breaks in between to answer your questions and share my thoughts. Let's move back. So now let's look at what do you mean by understanding the reason I put as new body. If you refer to the analogy I mentioned upfront, which was about, we are entering in as a transplant into a new body. So it's very important that we as a new organ need to understand whatever new circumstances are and environment are. So when you say we have to understand what is your role, it's beyond what is coming up in your job description and what you would have understood in the interview process gives you a very small window into what the role is, but really the first 90 days would help you understand your role better. So let's look at what the role would mean. The first part of not just your role but how your journey in the new team and new organization goes depends upon understanding some basics of what the culture is of the organization, of the team. For example, I use the term sphere of influence. Sphere of influence essentially means, if you think of this as a concentric circles, you are in the middle of the concentric circle. You need to understand who's in your next circle and the next circle and continue to build that out. And you need to understand when you enter into the organization, you have not yet built your sphere of influence. But you have to understand as a product management function, what is the sphere of influence. For example, in certain organizations, product management function drives the entire product life cycle, starting with product delivery, product assurance, product implementation, product marketing. Everything is driven by product management function. So as a product manager, he or she will be completely involved in every decision. So that's one part of the culture. There's another set of organizations where product management really focuses on the roadmap, focuses on letting down the path of the product execution, truly being the decisions of making priorities. But rest of the functions, you're more in an informational purpose and you enter only when there is a decision to be made. So that's the second part of the culture. Then there's a third part of the culture where product engineering drives a lot of the functions because it could be a truly technology driven product. But their product managers' purview and focus would be really on the external world, which is how do you make sure you understand the market needs and customer needs and drive it back into the engineering team. So the reason I'm giving you these examples are, that this is the difference you would see. There is no single playbook based on where the organization is and where the product is. The product management function has multiple influences. Very important that you know how that operates so that you understand how you can go forward. Second part of the culture is, and most of these elements are there in every organization, but the reason I'm talking about some of these are how primary are these as attributes. For example, is this an organization where continuously making mistakes and learning is acceptable? Something for you to understand very early on. That way, you know that you can continue to experiment and deliver rather than do a lot more upfront research and deliver. Okay. Or is it a culture of doing? When I say culture of doing, does the organization understand, and do my customers understand more by showing than talking, and researching and analysis is something you need to understand. While the trend right now is everything about, okay, I will show you and then tell, I will demonstrate, I will do a POC. But it's important when you get into a B2B context and enterprise context, there's a lot of pre-work that needs to be done. So it's very important to know how that works. Organizations have different ways of hierarchy, different ways of open culture, very key for you to know, so you know when you need help, how do you approach. Culture of innovation. Every organization has an innovation, but again, depending upon where the product is. Let's say a product has been established, mature product in the market, then the priority might not be innovation at that moment from a big idea perspective. The priority might be to sustain the momentum of the business, protect the core. If that is the culture for that product team, then your priority is about protecting the core. Not saying that you should not innovate, but protecting the core becomes your primary priority. How do you continue to innovate in protecting the core becomes your goal. While on the other hand, there could be a completely emerging, a nascent product team or a startup where the innovation has to be a daily, hourly affair. In that case, how fast and how easily that you can flex your thinking becomes key. So these are all elements of culture that you need to understand. Moving on to the second part of the role, which is community. The reason I use the word community is community includes everyone who can have a influence in your zone. So there is a tool called stakeholder map, which stakeholder map added with sphere of influence. These two are tools to help really to understand a few things. So let's look at what the community is. We spoke about the team, that you have internal and external stakeholders, but you also have larger communities who could help. A larger community such as like what we have right now, an NASSCOM product community. You could have extended product management community. You could have extended communities within your domain. You could have community of customers, focus groups, user groups. So you should really understand in each concentric circle, how does your community look like, and map out your stakeholders. This mapping especially is an important technique to do within your own organization, purely to understand a few things. Very early on, if you understand, there are some who would always continue to promote change. And there is a community of folks who would wait and watch. There is a community of folks who would look at what are the risks first before understanding the opportunity. And there's a community of folks who would follow only when everything is successful and already set. So understanding this kind of cycle and building allies for yourself and for the product, I think that's a very key exercise as part of community. Now let's come to the heart of the matter, which is customer. Everything is about the customer. I'm talking of two things here, two concepts, empathy and intelligence, separately, because they have different nuances. But at the end of the day, at the heart of it all is the customer. And if you drive every decision from customer's point of view, and not just customer, but the user's point of view, you have a goalpost, you have your North Star. While there are multiple things that can conflict, you may have certain times organization priorities with product and customer having a little bit of here and there conflict, etc. Remember, when you put customer first, a lot of things become clearer, and this has been my experience for a long time. So let me quickly touch upon empathy and intelligence as two different concepts. There are further sessions beyond this episode coming up, clearly focused just on these topics in deep dive. So let's talk of customer intelligence first, because this has been a concept which has been in vogue for a long time and should be fairly obvious. When we talk of customer intelligence, this is really to understand what is my customer's business, what is my customer's business priorities, where is my product fitting into those priorities, how do I align into his not just priorities but his funding decisions, his customers, stakeholders, and the ones whom I am speaking to in the customer organization, are they the right people? What about user? What is his life like? Is my product making his life better? So all these are what I would call facts. To understand, they're fairly hard facts, which is available through a series of interviews or understanding through documentation. Need to collect. That is customer intelligence. You could have an account intelligence map, or in a B2B context, in a B2C context, it's about the customer profiles. Understand what the intelligence all about in terms of facts. Now let's look at the right brain part of it, which is the empathy. Empathy is a very, 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 very important concept. This concept has been always used by very effective product managers on an implicit basis. If you think of a good product manager in your head, you would naturally know that he or she would be truly empathetic to the customer. They may not put up a chart saying this is how I'm doing customer empathy, but it comes very naturally. But now let's unpack a little bit of what is empathy, right? So customer empathy is truly, one is understanding what our customer is going through and fit our whole product and our entire solution into that context. Easier said than done. This is not about saying, okay, Mr. Customer, do you want this field or this report or this screen? That is not empathy. That's part of intelligence and requirements gathering. What is empathy is, okay, this is a customer who is probably in his 50s and continues to do mostly clerical mechanical work, has been doing so for last, let's say, 15 years or 20 years or 25 years. And all he wants is a simple way of generating this report. And by doing this, he's going to save 30 minutes. And by saving this 30 minutes, his life is going to get simpler because he or she is looking to do more out of his job, out of his role. Simple way of empathy. This is the simplest example I could give you. This changes the way we build a product, right? The reason this concept is extremely critical is, while first 90 days cannot give you everything around both intelligence and empathy, what it can give you is true understanding of your key customers and users' priorities. And intelligence is something which you would already have typically in any organization. Empathy is what you as a product manager can develop. So the last bit, which is context, I think this is probably the most important thing and probably pretty hard to understand as well. So I will try to give you a bit of sub-dimensions of what context are. Understanding your context is so key. Market context. So knowing that the market you are in, for example, if you are in an e-commerce retail space, if you are in educational tech space, today educational tech is extremely popular in India. Everybody would want, it's probably the most funded kind of a sector. And given this whole pandemic situation, it has even become more relevant. So is that the kind of context my business is in? Or is it a context where this business has been there for a long time and has a industry leader position? So what is that context? Versus, is this market going through so much change? For example, the whole hospitality and hotel sector. During pandemic, the entire sector went through a massive change, or our travel sector. So understanding that market context, very, very important. And this is something you could do even before entering the organization, because you would know what your organization is all about. Product context, we already spoke about the product being at the heart of it. Product context, apart from understanding what the product features are, priorities are, or the roadmap is, which is very, very key. A few more things that you need to understand is the product mature? Is the product in a growing space, or is the product just starting? It's just in a concept or an ideation stage. Very key to understand it, because then your behavior will change, the way you operate would change, the way your teams operate would change. Is the product following an agile life cycle, a waterfall life cycle? Very, very key to understand that. Is the product catering to a B2B audience, B2C audience, or B2B2C? Is the product focusing on a specific set of customers in a domain? Let's say financial services is only focused on insurance, and within insurance only a certain set of agents. or is this a generic product, like let us say a reporting application, or or um, um, or a shop cart kind of an application, or a completely technology application. It could be a cloud enabler. So needing to understand that product context is very key. Generic versus specialized, agile versus waterfall, mature versus growing. Is it new versus existing? Technology context, very key. While product managers may not be expected to do technology related coding activity, but understanding what technology the product is being built in, super critical. I think you must have heard this in every episode from every product manager, especially in the tech space. The reason the understand when I say understanding is awareness of what's going on in the technology context is important is because a product which is built in legacy stack and in a mode of it's a mature product would have a priority of protect the core, protect my key customers, ensure this is working, versus a brand new emerging context where you still don't know if the technology is even viable to the product market fit that you're trying to get to, and you are experimenting that technology. Then as a product manager, how you behave and what you do with the product is fairly different. So very important to understand the context. Organization context, I think we spoke about this a little bit. If it's a startup, the culture would be different. You may have to don multiple roles, even though you have a role of product manager. But when you're an enterprise, you have, because scale is important, you may have very, very specific charter for yourself and specific set of roles and responsibilities. And from an organization standpoint, what is important currently is something which is key to understand. For example, is it scale? If scale is key for the product and for organization, you as a product manager, how you behave would be fairly different. You would be focusing on reuse. You would be focusing on, I build an inventory of things which can be continued to use in my new features so that I can build scale. While if it's speed, then you're focused on experimentation. You're focused on a lot more iterative way of building it. Build, fail fast, take it to the market, come back. So the approaches would be different. Local versus global. The reason I put this context up is if you're building product for a domestic market and if you have access to those customers, how you build it, versus you're building here, but you're building it for the entire globe, which means you have to understand multiple geographies and their context is different, versus that you're building it for a single global statement is very different. So these are all, and what is organization's vision and priority? Are they looking to be local? Are they looking to be global? Very important for you to understand. And the business context. Business context is what are the business metrics that this product needs to hit? Is it a product which is selling like hotcakes and you have to keep up with the demand, or is it a product whose business model today is not really working and you have a job of doing a surgery on it? So these are the things that you have to quickly gain understanding of. Not all of this is relevant to everybody because it depends on which level you are entering into in the product management world. If you're entering into as a technical product manager as an entry grad, understanding your product and your team and your business, your customer becomes important. But as you grow higher, a lot more of this context becomes key. And the last statement I put it as, learn all this and understand all this with a really open mind. Best to go in as unbiased as possible because this is the only time where you would be unbiased. After that, naturally, your cognitive bias takes in. And try to go with an intent to own and solve, not just about, okay, I heard this is not my problem and he or she says so because I have heard this is the history. Try to decipher the noise, leave it out, understand and see if it's a genuine problem. Can you do something to own and solve? If you go with that intent, naturally our body language and the way we communicate also becomes different. So I'll take a pause at this point and see if we have any questions.
Shalini, there's a question. Shall I read out for you?
Yes, please.
I want to know what, according to you, is critical to succeed in product management, at least in the initial 90 days: functional domain, knowledge, technical proficiency, cognizant on the methodology, or is it a combination of all?
I definitely think it's a combination of all, but let's, so it talks of functional, basically domain or technology or process. I think that is the discussion, right? Definitely combination of all. and depends upon your experience. If you've already come in with an experience of, I already know how agile works, I already know this domain because I've worked in this in the past, and all I need to know is my product. If that is the situation you're coming in, then focusing on product becomes very key. But if you are entering in with not much of a context of the domain, or the process, then it's important you start with the process first, because domain is vast. Okay, and knowing the process makes your life easy, and then you would go into the product. Through product you learn the domain, and it has to be a continuous learning journey, and you have to continuously keep up on the domain. In the domain you can't learn everything because huge, it's vast, right? The product would be probably solving only one slice of the domain problem. Very important to know what that slices, and especially what are the key trends that are happening in that slice, because that's the most practical way of learning it. Purely because as you go and start meeting your customers, you need to have the language where they understand you, which means you need to know what's going on in the domain. That's how I would look at it. Any further questions, Ankita?
There's another question by Rishun. The content was awesome. I can totally resonate to everything you said. I think that's just a statement,
Thank you.
a
Thank you so
compliment.
much,
Yeah.
Rishan. Thank you. Okay, let me move into the next segment, and we will keep doing this. We'll stop, pause, and take questions. Um, okay, if you look at the 30, 60, 90 horizon, essentially split into three separate horizons, I wanted to just crystallize my learnings into action words or verbs as to what can you do, because this could serve as a guideline, and what you do under each section could be multiple based on the context that we spoke of. So 0 to 30 days, in my opinion, is all about learning. And any organization or any team typically would give you that space to actually learn. While I know you could be entering into a cauldron of, burning problems, and you may be expected to fix things, etc., but you still have that ability to sit back and learn. I think that's so important. So please take advantage of this. So 0 to 30 days, I would say, is a truly learning period, learning without bias. I looked at it as three sections. I said must see, must do, and must avoid. Must avoids especially are some of my own learnings. Not that my career has been, the smoothest. I've had my bumps, so I wanted to share some of my learnings. So must see is, I think, everyone related to the product. Try not to put a filter in the first 30 days. Try not to prioritize. Anybody who says who is related to this product, talk to them, meet them, make copious amounts of notes. I think this is the time you have to just do note taking, listen, observe, take it in. This is probably when, if any of you have children or observe children, the first before they even start talking, in the first 1 or 2 years till 18 months or so, all they're doing is observing and they're learning. That's exactly how we should be. Okay, and observe. And the most important thing to avoid is making any snap judgment about people around, about product and its vision or viability, about customer or about the approach or about the organization. Please, it's a natural tendency as a human being to go and say, I'm an expert, I know this, I've seen this enough, this is wrong, this is right. Try to avoid that. Because whatever happens, whatever it is, you are entering into a new context, right? When you're entering into a new context, you're starting from scratch. So that is the biggest learning I would say to avoid. Must do is absolutely ask questions, but this is an art by itself. And I believe asking questions the right way, not just the right questions, but also the right way, is very, very key. Ask questions in a way that you are seeking input. Ask questions in a way that you are looking for not just answers, but more for understanding, not in a way to question anything. Very, very important, the difference, right? So, for example, right, you're looking at, let's say, you have looked at a product demonstration and you see a screen, and the screen looks fairly legacy. It looks, the whole grid format, a bunch of columns and rows, and hundreds of rows of data coming in. Before going and saying this doesn't make any sense from UX perspective, or why would you even design a screen like this? Nobody looks at it this way. That's also a way to ask question. But would that get you anywhere? No. If your intent is to understand why is this designed this way and what is the use of this from a customer standpoint, is it still usable? Remember, at the heart of it, you're trying to get at whether this is still usable in my product, or should I get rid of it, or should I enhance it? That's kind of what your mind is thinking. But how you frame that question is so key, because you have to get to the fact that is it still usable? At the end of it all, for you as a PM coming from outside, this screen might not look anywhere healthy or easily usable. But if that is the most heavily used screen by every one of your users and they love it and they do not change it, then who are you to say yes or no to, right? So I'm saying, it's important to have the train yourself on how do you ask these questions. But asking questions, seeking input, using that as a data to help you make decisions, super, super important. Second, I think again, learning about product, market, process, tools, and metrics. Well, I think one of you already asked about this question. I kind of answered part of it. So the reason I put the tools and metrics is you need to understand what are the tools that your team is using to even conduct your own job role of product management. Sometimes that can be itself a blocker. You may have never used something like that, and that could become an issue for you to even understand what has gone in, right? So some of these very, very key, because these are your hygiene part of understanding. So product from a domain and usability standpoint, market, I spoke about the context, process, which is what kind of a product development process are you going through, how are you seeking input and feedback from the customers. Everything comes around the process. Understand that, which means you're meeting your service delivery teams, your customer teams, your account management teams, your development teams. That's how you almost build the entire 360-degree view of the process. You should write up for your own sake. Tools and metrics, and read up all the documentation that's available. Metrics. The reason I spoke of metrics is there are 2 or 3 different kinds of metrics. Product metrics can have, huge amount of data based on the maturity of a product. But what you should be focused on are what are the success metrics for this product from an organization standpoint and from a customer standpoint. And what are the failure metrics? How has this product failed? And believe me, it's very hard to get the failure metrics in a right way. You will either get an answer saying, oh, this product has so many problems, but nobody goes and does a double click. Or they can completely become defensive and say, you've just come in, you're already saying my product is failing. How dare you say that? So you don't want to get into either of the zones. So very key to understand what is the data that's out there to help you understand the success and failure metrics of the product. And through this, understand what are the success metrics for your own role, which is a harder part, but really continue to have that in your mind for your own personal self. Third, I think this is probably the most important and a big learning for me as well, is have faith in the product and the organizational vision and opportunity. Do not go in with the cynicism when you're entering into it. Have faith, because there is a reason, there's a history, there has been a lot of effort and work that would have gone into what that product has been built in. Once you go in with that open mind, you will get a lot more information, you'll be receptive. So for me, I think that's the first 30 days. Okay. 30 to 60 days is where I call it as relate. A period where you're still learning, you're doing probably a lot more deeper learning, but you're relating to the context and you're connecting the dots. Very important to do that this period. And this is the period while you're continuing your 30-day activity, you're adding on a few more things. What you're doing here is you're focusing on key customers and end users. And depending upon the product, you may have many customers, you may have only one customer, you may have many users, you may not even have built a user base. But assuming that if I assume that you already have a user base, you have a customer base, key that You prioritize, look at the top customers and end users, focus on them in this period. The reason I did not speak of customers in the 30-day period is you need to have some level of confidence in your own understanding of your context before you go and meet with the customer. So I wouldn't advise going and meeting the customer without being prepared. So which is why I would suggest start doing this in the 30 to 60-day period and go along with your SMEs, with your account teams, so that because that's where you would have built alliances and you start doing it along with them and focus on the top customers. And you can be candid with the customers and saying, I am taking on this job for the first time in this role. Please let me know what you're thinking. And no commitments need to be made. You can just understand, okay, these are all the things from your perspective, document, summarize, play it back to them, and say, while all this is happening, I'm going to work with my team and see what can be done. Believe me, this conversation goes a long way. Second, senior management, very key, because a lot of the current day-to-day run the business could be is what you may get from talking to your teams, but you may not be able to get as much priority from a top view unless you meet with your seniors. It could be your boss, it could be your senior stakeholders, and it could be your finance teams, it could be your account teams, and they would tell you what is tomorrow. You may have heard about what is the today part of the product from this meeting with all the other teams, even customers for that matter. But what needs to happen tomorrow, which is a big part of your role, would happen once you start speaking with your upper management. And this is the time to start setting up some priorities, working with them to understand. In a way, it's your job to really look at setting those priorities and converging on them. Okay, because this sets your entire career path. 15 minutes. And then I know we have another 15 minutes to go. Let me try to cover this and the next slide, and then we take the questions. The second part of 3060, the relating part, is must to ask deeper questions, because you would have gotten the surface level knowledge. Now understand, see, this is your product prioritization muscle has to be very, very strong. So now you've got this host and tons of information. Now you look at, okay, in this, what is my priority? So let me look at, within this customer, I see these are top 10 problems. Or if there is an issue list, issue tracker, look at all the issues and say, okay, this is where maximum issues are coming up. This is the kind of pattern that's coming in. So let me dig deeper, understand. And you may say, you may hear issues about, product quality or product velocity. And then dig deeper and say, okay, are we not fast enough? Why? Is there a block? Is there a bottleneck with the requirements piece? Is the customer not satisfied? Why? Is it because, and customer was satisfied a few months ago versus now, what has changed? So, you have to make your own synthesis. So really looking at it, connecting the dots. That's why I call this period as relating. You've gathered the information, you relate, ask deeper questions. Build on your own core strength, very important. You can't be, round peg in a round hole in a square peg, right? Each of us have our own strengths. Some of us from our could be from engineering background. Some of us could be from business background, from sales background, from customer service background. Use that as your strength and build upon it. Do not try to be all in the first 90 days. At the same time, you should understand what is your strength and that you're working from your place of strength, but you need help in other places. So very important to be aware of that. And a lot of people, what they do is they try to do everything. I'll do a little bit of sales, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of account management, and finally end up not being able to achieve. So very key that your goalpost is your customer, your milestones that that you would have established with your senior management. Work from your place of strength and go towards it. And the most important thing, identify what could be a first win in your first 90 days. Believe me, it's so important to show success in the first 90 days period, even if it's a very small success. And it could be a process success, it could be a feature, it could be an idea, it could be a POC, it could be a customer success. Doesn't matter. Identifying a low-hanging fruit and delivering on it will increase two things: confidence in your own self, and you would have connected dots in multiple places and delivered something, and confidence for your stakeholders, both internally as an organization and the customer. And customer would actually see that you have heard, you have taken notes, you've gone back, worked on it, and come back with a result. So, identifying a quick win and showing a first win is probably you should start in this period. You would get it. If you've done your first 30 days right, you would understand it right away. Must avoid. What we should avoid is relying only on history. While I did say in the last period to understand the history, take notes, but don't rely only on historical decisions. This is where you have an opportunity to start afresh and start identifying where are the pieces where you can question and experiment. So start avoiding only on history and start making your own observations, data based judgment calls. And this is also not the period where you go and drastically change vision and core tenets of the product because you think you've done in a competitor, it'll work here. It may not. It will take a little bit of time. This is a time to focus on smaller wins, incremental understanding. Probably after first 90 days is when you can start looking at much bigger changes. So the last bit, 60 to 90 days, I think this is the period I call it as deliver. And this is where I would say continuing with the past journey, but from a must see perspective, you have to continue with your customers and end users and senior management. I'm insisting on end users again because very important when you meet with the users, the perspective that you get versus when you meet with the customers management team can always be different. And again, between B2B and B2C, how you look at that, how do you do the user research, how do you work with the user research team and do this becomes really key. More importantly, deepen your relationship with the team. It could be your own product team, or you could be a single product manager, which means you start deepening relationship with your product engineering and other development teams and your peers. Believe me, this is the network you have to start building internally. And you're still in a fresh space. Building now would always make a huge difference versus doing it later. Now, must do. This is, I think, we spoke about the quick win. This is where you can look at the experimentation period, delivering a quick win. Could be a first feature, it could be a first POC. It could be, you could be grooming the backlog in a different way and showing, how it can give a different product velocity. Any of these things. Deliver a quick win. You would have met multiple customers. It's so important to come back, write up on those customers' expectations, write up those user summaries, write up those client visit summaries or customer call summaries. Go into customer calls. You can just be a listener. You need not be a speaker, but you write down your own understanding and interpretation of those calls, expectations, and play it back, relay it back to your teams, to your senior management. The communication has to be constant. And if you're taking on a product manager role who has to also communicate about the vision, this is the time where you relay back the product vision again and again and again to your teams so that they understand, you understand, and you understand, and they understand. Very important to start building that. Start converging on key milestones for your own personal goals as well as for the product with the stakeholders. And continue to deepen your understanding of product and users. If we drop the ball on the product at this point and just focus on what next, then we lose the understanding of the core domain and core product space. So must avoid. This is where I would say no more sitting back, no more just listening and observing. You have to avoid inaction. If even after this period you don't show, this is the show and tell period, right? If you don't show action, if you do not show something, then the pressure that comes on later is humongous. So this is a period where you have to avoid inaction. So at this point, I think I would conclude it by saying, if you have done all this well, and I trust all of you would have done this well, congratulations, you've crossed your first milestone now. And this is something which some of our dear product community mentors have been talking about. First 90 days, we go in with tremendous amount of ability to learn, willingness to learn, and we kind of somewhere lose that. We should not. So repeat every 90 days is how I would end this session. And you may not get 90 days to repeat it after the first 90. You may have to do it daily, weekly, quarterly, but do it. Continue to learn, continue to relate, continue to deliver. With that, I would close the session and let's look at further questions. Ankita?
Thanks, Shalini. So we have 7 more minutes before we close the session. There is another question, which is, what could be those 2 to 3 top things to do to embed product management in a very structured slash bureaucratic organization?
Okay. Important question. To implement product management. Okay, that's probably different from the first 90 days, right? I think it's a fairly vast question. So, but if you have to implement a few things within a structured organization, go with the structure. Do not defeat the structure. So go with the structure, but the top three things that you could do, my experiences, one is go with the customer. If you can identify the first customer, the biggest customer, could be the loudest customer, could be the most problematic customer. If you pick that one customer and figure out what one problem is and you look at solving that one problem, I think that within the structure that's been given, for me, that is your top one, top two, top three priority. Once you do that, you are establishing a way of doing things. You're establishing that the customer is at the heart of it all. Makes a huge difference. So that's been my experience.
Thanks,
And
Shalini.
anything more, Ankita?
Yeah, the next question is a very interesting one. How to balance between end users, customers versus stakeholders if there are conflicts in objectives?
This is believe me, this happens a lot of times. I think that's why we have a job, right? Which is product management job. Our believe that's why I began the session saying our biggest job is creating certainty out of uncertainty. The conflict of objectives would come in because of this, right? Because there is somewhere a gap in understanding. No organization would want to go and say, I do not want to do something which my customer asks. There would be a reason of why they are saying that. So I think the first thing is understanding what the customer's objectives are, and then go back and align and relate. Balancing, I would say more than balancing, it's alignment. Because I don't think there is balance. Once you have a priority list set, it's a priority, right? You only do one thing at a time. Um, Typical reasons why you would have conflicts, right? One is it could be a budgetary constraint. A customer says, okay, this is not a new requirement, I'm not going to pay for it, this is a bug, I expected this to happen. An organization says, no, sorry, this is all my budget is for project, I will not do this. So as a product manager, how would you do this? Would be a typical scenario. And that is where really looking to understand the validity of the customer's argument, understanding what our own budget cycles are, our own estimation is, and fitting it in and working with the stakeholders always works. Like I said, both ends of the cycle, both are rational sets of customers. Both customer and organization are rational. Remember, always go with that faith. Second is any backlog as a product manager. There's no point in overbalancing and saying, okay, this customer wants, I'll give you all the 100 things. No, I think that is where, as a product manager, you have to hold true to the product vision or the goals. Yes, the vision sometimes, not vision, the goals sometimes may evolve based on and how you're evolving with the product market fit. But once you know the use case and once you have identified, very, very key that you hold anchor to the product vision. And sometimes you may have to go back and tell the customer, sorry, Mr. Customer, I don't think you're understanding what the product is supposed to do for you, for your problem. And your problem could be solved this way. So I think those are the conversations we need to have.
Thanks,
Next question,
Shalini.
Ankita.
Next question is by Amit. He's asking, are these concepts applicable to existing products or new product initiatives?
Both. Absolutely, for both. I think that's why I was giving examples of at each level. For existing products, I think we have spoken at length, absolutely applies all this context. For new products also, new product, you have to absolutely understand your market context. If you don't know, if you're in a flexible market, if you're in an in-demand market, if you're in a sinking market, if you're in a cost market versus a revenue market, if you don't understand how your competitors are doing, if there is no competitor, if there's a brand new opportunity that you're creating, your customer base, how do you even educate and influence your customers? So every single concept I spoke about is absolutely key, both in existing and new.
Thanks, Shalini. Mohan has a question for you. What
Sure.
if one is new to the domain of product at the time of taking up this role? That is, one may be in healthcare now, need to shift to fintech.
Yeah. Yes, happens. Product management is a horizontal skill. That is where I think I talked of the dimensions, right? You have product, you have domain, you have which is product knowledge, domain knowledge, your skills, which is the PM skills itself, and you have technology. I think these are the four key dimensions that come in for any of the PM roles as skill sets. So in this case, if you are getting in, you would still be a product manager if that's what you are saying. That you have your skills, technology, you have a fair enough understanding. Product and domain is where you have zero understanding. The understanding of that product may not even be expected because it's you are entering it for the first time. The domain understanding, I think the way to go about it is focus on the process and the skills. Once you start getting into the process and the skills and making sure you understand the overall product life cycle, and by learning each feature by feature of the product, you are naturally learning the domain of the product. So that's a what I would say bottoms up learning. You should do it. While on the other hand, and also use a lot of your program and project management skills during this time to really bring together stakeholders, to really focus on aligning the vision, focus on grooming the backlog, using data and using the tools. That will naturally help you start making your process a lot more effective. Would give you a quick win. On in parallel, for your own sake, let's say you want to get into fintech, get into a crash course of what fintech is all about. There is no way you can stay away from the domain for too long. So as soon as you invest in yourself, it's good for you. So Ankita, do we want to take a one last question or we conclude it?
I think it's already 3:30, so we have let's have a one question for 1 minute. So the last question is, how much of change management is required in the first 90 days and also overall for a PM?
I'll answer the question in reverse. Overall, in PM, change is what we always manage. That is our job. When I talked of uncertainty and chaos and things like that, essentially it's change that we are managing. Change could be in project priorities, organization priorities, or product features, or the needs. So that's like an integral part of the job and a hugely prominent part of the job. Now coming to and depend irrespective of what life cycle phase of the product, you will continue to manage change, whether it's new, existing, mature, sunsetting products. Also, you have to manage change. Let's say there are products where you are expected as a product manager to figure out a path of retirement. Even there, you're managing change. So change is absolutely key. And all all the C's I spoke about: context, culture, customer, etc. The reason you have to understand so much is how do you manage the next C, which is change. Now, coming to if it is a change in the first 90 days, depending upon context, you may be expected to start making a difference within the 90 days itself. Some of the organizations expect you to start making changes in the first few days itself because there could be burning problems. Okay, but large part of the organizations give you that period where you can reflect, understand, and start looking at change. A big part of strategic changes post 90 days. The incremental changes, for example, grooming a backlog, making the priority metrics different, etc., can be something which continues, and it can happen. And that could happen from a 30 to 60-day period itself. So with that, I would conclude the session. This last slide shows you all the ways you can connect to NASSCOM. NASSCOM.in/skilldev is where we have the recording of every single content that we have already developed on product management. I would welcome you all to please look at it. Call out to action. We are going to have a series of webinars, some of it deep dive in the topics that we discussed today. And please be sure to spread it out in your network and join us. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shalini, for your insights and the practical suggestions you provided. How important is the knowledge of your product, your customers, and the agile environment you work in, and this is how you shape your first 90 days. Thank you so much. To all the audience, our next session is on December 17th on Forget the Product and Focus on Consumer Experience. For more details, please log in few days on nascom.in/events. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a good week. Bye bye.